Summary of Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. Introduction. There's a question at the heart of the human condition, one that is asked in moments of profound suffering. What is the meaning of life? We are taught to believe that meaning is found in happiness, success, or freedom from pain. But what happens when all of that is stripped away? What meaning can be found in a life of inescapable, overwhelming suffering? This is the question that psychiatrist and neurologist Viktor E. Frankl answers. His book, Man's Search for Meaning, is more than a memoir. It is a foundational work of modern psychology. The book is divided into two parts. The first is a chilling, objective account of his experiences as a prisoner in Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz. He chronicles the psychological journey of the average prisoner and seeks to answer the question, how was everyday life in a concentration camp reflected in the mind of the average prisoner? From this crucible of unimaginable horror, Frankl's central thesis emerged. He found that the primary, most powerful motivational force in a human being is not a will to pleasure, as Freud taught, or a will to power, as Adler taught, but a will to meaning. He observed that the prisoners who had the greatest chance of survival were not the most physically robust, but those who held on to a definite purpose for their life. They understood their why, and this understanding gave them the strength to bear almost anyhow. This book is his exploration of that discovery and his explanation of the psychotherapeutic method it inspired, logotherapy. We will explore his findings through the course of this summary. Chapter 1. Part 1. Experiences in a concentration camp. The first phase, shock. The first part of the book is Frankl's autobiographical account, which he analyzes not as a victim, but as a psychiatrist. He divides the prisoner's psychological journey into three distinct phases. The first phase is the period following admission into the camp, and its main symptom is shock. Frankl describes being transported on a train with 500 other people, packed so tightly they could not even sit down. They arrived at Auschwitz. He describes the infamous finger game, the first selection. A high-ranking SS officer would look at each prisoner and, with a casual flick of his finger, point either to the left or to the right. Left meant the gas chamber. Right meant forced labor. Frankl, holding his head high, was pointed to the right. In that moment, his entire former life was obliterated. He was stripped of everything, not just his clothes and his possessions, but his life's work, a scientific manuscript he had hidden in his coat. He was shaved of all body hair, disinfected, and given the rags of a prisoner who had already been gassed. His name was taken, and he became only a number. Frankl observes a key psychological symptom in this first phase, the delusion of reprieve. Even as the prisoners saw the chimneys of the crematorium, their minds clung to the hope that it wouldn't be so bad, or that they would be saved at the last moment. It was a form of psychological self-preservation. When all illusions were finally destroyed, they were overcome with a grim sense of humor. They joked about their own grotesque appearance. This was followed by a cold, detached curiosity, a state of mind that allowed them to observe the horrors around them, including their own fate, with a kind of objective, emotional distance. This shock and emotional numbing was the mind's first line of defense against a reality too terrible to comprehend. Chapter 2. Part 1, continued. The second phase, apathy. The second psychological phase, which characterized the long period of being entrenched in camp life, was apathy. This, Frankl explains, was a necessary protective shell. It was an emotional death. The prisoner became hardened to the daily, hourly sights of beatings, starvation, and death. The mental agony was all-consuming. Life was reduced to its most primitive level. The prisoner's mind became fixated on one thing and one thing only, survival. Not survival in the grand sense, but survival of the next 24 hours. The mind became obsessed with the most basic, animalistic questions. Can I get an extra piece of bread? Can I get a pair of shoes without holes? Will I be put on the list for the next transport? All mental and emotional energy was directed toward this single goal. All other human instincts, including the drive for sex or cultural pursuits, were hibernated. It was in the depths of this apathy that Frankl made his most profound discovery. On a pre-dawn march, barefoot and stumbling over icy rocks, with guards shouting and striking them, a man next to him whispered, "If our wives could see us now." This sparked a thought in Frankl's mind. He began to think of his own wife. He detached himself from the misery of the march and entered a state of deep inner contemplation, visualizing her face, imagining her smile, and having a conversation with her in his mind. He did not know if she was alive or dead, but in that moment, it ceased to matter. He was filled with a profound sense of love. He had a revelation. The salvation of man is through love and in love. He understood that a man who has nothing left in this world may still know bliss, even if only for a brief moment, in the contemplation of his beloved. This led to his next discovery, the last of the human freedoms. The guards could take everything from him, his family, his work, his clothes, his name. They could control his entire environment. But there was one thing they could never, ever take: his freedom to choose his attitude in any given set of circumstances. Even in the camp, man could choose. He observed those saints who would walk through the huts, comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. These few individuals proved that you can take everything from a man but one thing: the freedom to choose your own way. It was here he saw the truth of Nietzsche's words. He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. The why for Frankl became his future, his hope of being reunited with his wife, and his mission to rewrite the scientific manuscript that had been taken from him. This sense of a future purpose was the anchor that kept him from falling into the abyss of apathy. Those whose why was gone, who had lost all hope for the future, were the ones who would lie down in the barracks, refuse to get up, and die. Chapter 3. Part 1. Continued. The third phase, liberation. The third psychological phase is the period after liberation. Frankl describes the day the white flag was raised over the camp gates. The prisoners, in their apathy, could not even feel joy. They had to relearn what it meant to be happy. When they were finally free, they did not experience the longed-for happiness they had dreamed of for years. Instead, they experienced disillusionment and bitterness. The bitterness came from returning to their old towns and finding that no one awaited them. The why that had kept them alive, the hope of seeing a loved one, was now gone. They returned to a world that met them with a shrug, that did not want to hear their stories. The disillusionment came from within. Frankl describes the danger of the sudden release of pressure on the psyche. For years, the prisoner had been the object of such intense brutality. Now, he believed he was free to inflict the same brutality on others. It took a tremendous, conscious, moral effort to remember how to be a civilized human being, to understand that suffering does not give one the right to make others suffer. Frankl's great test, and that of his fellow survivors, was to choose to remain human. Chapter 4. Part 2. Logotherapy in a nutshell. This second part of the book is where Frankl boils down the lessons from the camp into his formal theory of psychotherapy. He calls it logotherapy, from the Greek word logos, which means meaning. Logotherapy is a meaning-centered therapy. Frankl positions it against the other great schools of his time. Freudian psychoanalysis, he states, is based on a will to pleasure. Adlerian psychology is based on a will to power. But Frankl argues that the primary, most powerful motivational force in a human being is a will to meaning. When a person cannot find this meaning, they fall into an existential vacuum, a state of profound emptiness and meaninglessness that Frankl saw as the primary neurogenic neurosis of the 20th century. The core of logotherapy is a radical shift in perspective. Frankl insists that we must stop asking life what we can expect from it. Instead, we must realize that life is the one asking us the questions. Life is questioning us daily and hourly. Our answer to life's questions cannot be given in talk or meditation. Our answer must consist of right action and right conduct. Logotherapy teaches that we can discover this meaning in one of three ways. First, by creating a work or doing a deed. This is the creative value. We find meaning by accomplishing a task, by building something, or by committing ourselves to our work. Second, by experiencing something or encountering someone. This is the experiential value. We find meaning by experiencing goodness, truth, or beauty, such as in nature, or by encountering another human being in their uniqueness, which is to say, by loving them. Third, and most important, by the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering. This is the attitudinal value. When we are faced with a situation we cannot change, an inoperable disease, or the loss of a loved one, or being in a concentration camp, we are given our last and greatest opportunity to find meaning. We are challenged to change ourselves. By choosing to face our suffering with courage and dignity, we can turn a personal tragedy into a human achievement. Final summary. Man's search for meaning is a profound testament to the human spirit's capacity for self-determination. It teaches that suffering itself is meaningless. We are the ones who give it meaning by the way we choose to respond to it. We are not defined by our circumstances, but by our decisions. In all situations, we possess the last of the human freedoms, the power to choose our own attitude. Life ultimately means taking the responsibility to find the why that allows us to bear almost any how.
Thanks for listening. If you found this summary valuable, please like, subscribe, and comment with your thoughts. To support the channel, all links are in the description.